22 minutes to 8 here on 612 ABC with Phil Smith and Ian J. How are you?
Good morning. Yes, I'm well.
Good to have you here. And this has been, it's put a smile on your face. I think this is one of the books that you've most enjoyed in the last, since the start of the year. Am I right?
It'd have to go close to, Phil. It's been really, really enjoyable and a great read, yeah.
We're looking at Seventh Time Lucky. It's a memoir, if you like, by Harry Giesen. A compelling, colourful and lively account. One man's escapes, captures and escapades during World War II.
Yes.
Mate, one of those things where you think about an average local bloke.
Yep.
And how he just finds himself at a remarkable time and place. Wrong time, right place.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this, Phil, is this guy's not a general. He wasn't the captain of a ship. He wasn't the pilot of a bomber flying missions. He was a private.
How I won the war.
No, this guy's a private who joined. He lied about his age to get into the New South Wales Battalion, AIF, and headed off to Crete along with many other Australians and found himself in the thick of things. And next thing, he's doing a bit of a runner and getting captured along the way.
As you say, it sounds very much like, and the risk is cliche, and does that come through in the book, a knockabout, larrikin, 1940s style Australian bloke.
Certainly does. But the other thing that I found really interesting was that these blokes, they were thinkers. They had the smarts as well. So the larrikinism's there, certainly. I mean, that you're going to get that in any event. But the important thing that came out of this for me was the fact that this was a guy, and these other fellas that he was with were thinkers. They thought about what they were doing, they learned from their lessons, and they applied the lessons as they went along. Because, I mean, as we know, he had, 7 goes before he got it right.
Is there a thing in that about, or does the book cause you to ask, how would a modern day 20-year-old, somebody from the suburbs of Brisbane now cope with that?
I think that those sort of times bring out parts of us that we don't normally explore. I think that if the situation occurred today, it'd be a different set of things that might happen, but the outcome may well and truly be the same. With Harry's case and the fellow that he spent most of his time escaping with, George, there was the friendship there. That was the thing that came through for me as well. They were friends, they were mates, they supported each other through. They had all sorts of things going on the outside. They were in Austria. It wasn't super like concentration camp style capturing. These guys were in Austria. They had a good commandant who looked after them pretty well, let them go out into work groups and things like that. Sawmills. They had relationships on the outside with some of the local ladies, and so it was more a community. It was more of a relationship, a friendship away from Australia.
That's very interesting, because that's an aspect of it that perhaps most of us don't have in the limited picture or understanding that we have of that time, and it's slipping well back into ancient history now. The 1940s. That is now a long time ago.
Indeed.
Harry Giesen Does he gloss over the hardship of it, though?
Not necessarily, no. There seems to me to be somewhere in the book there's a little bit of editing that may have gone on, and I found some of it a little bit short, like some of the character introductions were a little bit short. And I don't know whether or not some of the more difficult parts of his experiences went with that as well. But he certainly observes things, there's no doubt about that. He sees things from a perspective of a young Australian viewing the war from where he was. And when he finally made his escape through Yugoslavia, he gets involved in some pretty heavy fighting. And I suspect that most of his fighting was done as he was doing his retreat out of Europe.
Because there was a generation of blokes that just didn't talk about the tough stuff.
Yeah.
And most of us in this audience, I suspect, would have, if not fathers, uncles, friends, those who would fall into that category.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense in which he is perhaps glossing over or leaving that stuff and presenting more of the, not jolly, but the positive side of the experience?
I think it's balanced. I think it really is balanced. Remembering that Austria was occupied as part of Germany at the time, so the fighting had actually moved on from that particular period. And we're talking about a fellow who's now inside a prison of war environment, not probably being witness to a lot of the horrific things that were going on outside of that environment at the time, but he certainly became aware of them later on down the track. And the other good thing about Harry was when he got back to Australia, the first thing he wanted to do was head off to New Guinea and help defend Australia in that quarter, and I thought that was really remarkable.
Remarkable. I'm with Ian J. It's Saturday Reads, and the book for this fortnight is Seventh Time Lucky, Harry Giesen's compelling story, as Ian sees it, of his series of escapes and attempted escapes from occupied Europe in the 1940s. So, what would you give it in terms of a score out of 5?
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5, Phil. It's pretty good. It's right up there. As I said, the only thing I felt that sometimes the characters that were introduced, I didn't get a feeling for where they came from. They just kind of turned up. But there's some excellent stuff in there. There's some funny moments, and there's also, you know, a real sense of his experience was very, very special to him, and he's presented it in a way that is accessible, entertaining, wonderful.
So for you, a good personal experience, but would you also recommend it as something that would give a broader understanding of that period?
Certainly. It should have wide reading, because it is a different slant on the traditions that we hear about from World War II.
Published by Sid Harter, and we will have the details for you on the web this afternoon. Let's do traffic.